afternoon and welcome to the Iron County Fair Ag Barn interviews. We are talking ag with local producers Kim and Matt, who have really created this synergistic relationship between their two operations. How are you guys doing this afternoon?
Doing good.
Good.
So with the two different things, you guys have been friends for a long time or just a short amount of time?
10 years?
Yeah, probably about 10.
So was it 10 years ago that we had the beehive incident with the riser incident happen?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
So earlier in Wired Wednesday when we did an interview with you guys, the riser was covered with bees and you were so mad. Matt was so mad at Kim of where did all of these bees come from and how to deal with them. And then Kim said, hey, I'm so sorry, and gave Matt honey, right?
Yep.
And from there blossomed a friendship of a lifetime almost. The wives are nodding their heads saying, oh yes, right?
Yeah.
The wives and sister. So with the different aspects of that, where do you guys feel that more farmers and producers could create synergistic relationships between each other? Or how has it benefited your operation specifically?
Oh, huge. It's, especially for me as a beekeeper, I rely on farmers and their property to put bees on. And so it's important for me to have a good relationship, not only with the farmers, the growers and that, but understanding when they're going to spray, and because they'll kill my bees. And so for me, it's important to have that relationship so that I understand. So I have a friendship with them, but I can call them anytime, and vice versa. They can call me and be like, hey, look out for this.
With chemical spray, Matt, would you say that it's even just benefited in letting him know when you are spraying? Because don't bees in some regard help the blossoms on the alfalfa?
Yeah, it's good having this relationship with Kim because he's kind of taught me a lot about bees and the logistics of when we kind of do some of our stuff and notifying some of the people around us when we do spray. And he's got some hives that are right on our hay fields, and it works out really good because we can still continue to spray. Everything is normal. He just has to adjust a few things that he's doing, putting some nets on and things like that, because we don't want to kill his bees, because bees are one of those things where it helps pollinate things, and it's not necessarily just in the hay itself, but also the other plants, the forage for the livestock, for the animals, for everything else has a benefit from the bees. And so we want to make sure that we keep those alive so that they can do what nature intended them to do.
Well, and it's really incredible too, because with the different aspects of all producers, right, whether you're a livestock producer or a forage producer, there's different opportunities to come together and to grow, and making sure. And aren't your families pretty involved in these different aspects?
They are. Your family's tied in a lot more than mine. My wife's allergic to bees, and so my help starts after the honey's harvest. We've loaded her in the ambulance a couple times. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's EpiPen a few times, but my kids are tied in on the other side of it. Once I extract my honey, that's where my kids are more tied into the helping me bottle, sell. It's every once in a while I'll take them out, but I'm very careful on what I do with my family.
So with the different aspects of that, was that kind of a hindrance in getting started in bees, or has it really ignited your fire to make sure that people are more or less be aware?
Yeah, I'm a lot, like when I first got into bees, we didn't know she was allergic to them. And we had bees a couple of years. She got stung down in St. George, and that's where we found out she was allergic. And then I carried a dead bee into the house a couple of years after that, and then it's definitely changed on how I run bees. I used to keep bees closer to town, and now my bees are off the beaten path. I worry more about kids and people having access to my beehives, that I'm very conscious on where I place my yards. It's where other beekeepers, they don't care. And that's a relationship that the beekeeper needs to have with the community and with their farmer, is understanding not only what the farmer's family's doing, what the public's doing, access roads. I definitely place my bees in different spots than I did 10 years ago.
Well, and to some degree, I feel like bees are livestock. to some degree, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a conscious decision of yours on making sure that the public is safe from those things, but also being aware that the bees need to be out in the public, to make sure that they're pollinating and do what bees do best. Making sure that we're getting the forages and the grasses and the different things taken care of. But within that, it also keeps the rabbit brush. I've heard you mention before, rabbit brush keeps
That's
your
my
bees
saving
alive.
grace, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, rabbit brush is my very last thing I get at the end of the year. And so like right now I'm pulling honey and rabbit brush is coming into bloom, and that I pray I get a ton of rabbit brush so I don't have to feed a lot of sugar.
Well, hopefully with the rain we've had this
Yes.
afternoon, that helps
Yes.
in the future.
For sure.
So with the production of cows and sheep, have you seen their lifestyle change because of the bees? Not necessarily in the corrals per se, but in the grasslands and the different forage areas.
It's kind of one of those things where we've had a lot of discussion on our operation, because I mean it's one of those things where I can't physically go out and see a difference, but when we talk quite a bit, my comment regularly is it's not hurting anything, and we hope that it's helping and hope that it's helping him as well.
Well, it only has to help 1% better, and over time
Right,
that
exactly.
accumulates, right?
Yeah.
I
and
can tell you
that's-
as a bee, like having my bees, I've noticed over the years, like the wild flowers have increased in the valley. It's where my yards are. It's I don't know how much cows eat the wildflowers and that, but it's definitely increased that quite a bit.
Well, and one
Yeah.
would say that the wildflowers produce seeds, which the birds
Yeah.
eat, which, then get all of the kind of cycle of life type of thing.
Yep.
You figure 1 in 3 bites you eat, a bee has to touch.
One in
It's 1 in
three?
3. It's because you figure, so you have your hay.
Okay.
You don't get your seed without a bee pollinating hay. So
Okay.
then your cows have to eat it. Almonds.
And then in turn we eat
and,
cows,
yeah,
right?
Milk comes from a bee because of your hay. It's your flowers. It's all your fruits, your vegetables. You really tie everything in. Like I've always thought about it. Like pretty much if we didn't have bees, we'd be eating rice. It's pretty much.
Rice is kind of boring
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I don't like a good white rice every once in a while. Well, and it's really interesting that you bring that up, because aren't almonds, I mean, not that we grow almonds in Iron County, but I know in the springtime you truck your bees down to California.
Yeah.
And aren't almonds only benefited from heat bees? Like there's no other
Yeah,
way to pollinate?
they ship a ton of bees down to California in the month of February, and without a bee, you wouldn't have almonds. And so there's roughly right around 2 million hives that go to California for that 6 weeks.
Million hives,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
bees.
Yeah,
So
you
how
figure-
many bees does that equate to?
So you figure every hive will have 40 to 70,000 bees inside that
Good
hive.
Lord.
And so, and they figure down there, it's about 2 hives per acre is what they roughly try to get to pollinate an orchard. And like, we have contracts down there that have 13,000 hives sitting on them. They're just lots of 40s to 50s sitting everywhere down there.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
Yeah, there's bees everywhere down there in February.
So Matt, with all of the different bee activity that we've had in, specifically from Kim's hives, where do you feel like Iron County could improve in making sure that the relationship between livestock producers or hay producers and hives could benefit more?
So the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is just getting to know these guys so that you can help them help you with your operation. Knowing what you can spray around them, what you can't do. When it comes to the animals, I'm yet to really see where we've had an issue with like our cows or the sheep or anything like that getting into the hives and tipping them over. You ever seen that? Yeah. So I mean, we don't really have any of those types of issues, but it's kind of nice and kind of interesting because I've learned all kinds of useless facts about flowers and bees. And it's funny because I'll go out and one of his main yards is where our corrals are, and so I'm out there a couple times a day at least. And I'll usually call him and say, hey, why aren't there any bees drinking out of this? And I've kind of changed some of the stuff that I'm doing so that it'll help his bees, because in return, I hope that they're helping the grasses and the hay and everything else to be pollinated, so.
Well, and what's one thing that the community could do to make sure that we are saving bees, necessarily, or not killing them unnecessarily? Like my kids, they go out in our yard, because we know there's a beekeeper in our neighborhood, and she has one of those lock hives where she just turns a key and it drains honey, and we love the honey. But they go and save bees from like our pool because they're, trying to get out and they can't and whatnot. So how could we help feed the bees per se and make sure that they're still, available and still live?
I think the biggest thing is, so you figure our hot months, bees are hauling water like crazy. And so they, like your pool, you talk about your pool. If people are seeing a lot of bees in their house and their pool and that, it's just set out a pitcher of water with rocks in it. It's that the bees can go land on those rocks and suck the water up. Like Matt, I can tell when he starts calling me and he's like, I'm not seeing bees in my trough. That's how I can gauge the health of my hives in the area. Is normally when they're really healthy, the whole trough on the outside edge will be covered in bees just sucking water.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and with that being said, like I said earlier, I've kind of changed some of the stuff that I'm doing. I've put some sticks and things like that so that these bees have a place to land, so that they're not just all drowning and dying. And so I've kind of changed up some of the stuff that we're doing.
Do the cows and sheep get mad because of that?
No, I haven't seen an issue. Horses, nothing.
So animals can get along with one another?
Yep.
Well, and with insects, I guess, technically?
Yeah.
Do you think humans could as well? You go back to people need to talk to each other and become, this village.
If society ran like a beehive, holy cow, it'd be a whole different world.
Okay, so you're saying the sickest bee can drive the hive?
They will kill them.
So we need a healthy queen.
Yeah, you need a healthy hive.
Even a king,
You don't want to be a male in a hive, they'll kill you.
Yeah, and I think that's been the biggest thing with this relationship that Kim and I have developed is just that communication, because I've changed stuff that I'm doing. He's adjusted some of the stuff that he's doing, and it's that willingness to work together, because I know that there's some people in this industry that are just so hard-headed and not willing to change that, this is how they've done it for 100 years, this is how we're going to continue to do it. In order to help each other out, you got to be able to adapt and evolve a little bit, because it's for the greater good of everything that we're trying to do. He's trying to get us good, local, fresh honey. I'm trying to raise nice meat animals, for consumption, and so it kind of goes hand in hand.
Well, and it seems like, you guys have taken, let's say the world's a big clock. You have a couple of cogs of the different assets or the different avenues of, agriculture and the different things, right? But you're also willing to figure out who's connected to you and how to make their lives better, or their production or their operations better. And that eventually feeds the world, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking earlier with President of the Utah Farm Bureau Federation, Wade Eliason, and he was saying, it's 2% of the entire nation, so America's population feeds the rest of the 98 or 99% of us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where they don't have to worry about where food comes from necessarily, but it seems like that 2% of producers, regardless of what you're necessarily into specifically, you go into how do you make it better? How do you make it more effective? How do you stretch it that one more inch further to make sure that we're feeding that many more people, or going through and creating those relationships? Because at the core of it, we're a village, right?
Yep.
All of us, if I buy honey and meat, but I'm producing all the greens, then I'm feeding the greens back to you. Not that I am yet. Someday I will be a semi-producer. My hopes and wishes and fishes, right? But it really goes towards, you should create that camaraderie or that community or that village per se, in making sure everybody is getting what they should, or helping out where we can.
Yep.
it's really important that those relationships are formed and that we're open to those different communications, because it creates that synergy. It creates things that, or paths that we would have never otherwise envisioned.
Right. And that's, that's kind of one of the things that I strive to do. I travel quite a bit throughout southern Utah and northern Arizona trying to help, friends and other operators. And in doing so, I'm also kind of seeing how they run things so that I can try and make our operation better as well. And it's interesting to see, especially when you go across state lines, the different way people operate. But at the end of the day, we're all competing for the same goal. I shouldn't say competing. We're all striving for the same goal, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Raise nice stock for consumption.
Well, and it goes to show that we're all able to learn from each other. We're all able to teach each other, and being willing to go to the table or to come to the table and make sure that we are learning those different things. Or, and for me, it's very simple. If I know how to make bread and I can teach somebody else how to make bread, they're better for it, right? Just like if they're able to teach me how to harvest honey, or whatever, then my household's better for it. Or if I know how to harvest a consumptive meat, if I get a primal cut, but I know what to do with it, and how to cut it up and how to feed my family for the next 6 months, then that creates an entirely different world than what people are seeing today. Yeah. There's some imagery going around social media right now of what generically, a store-bought meat looks like versus what meat out of a cut pack house looks like, a local cut pack house, excuse me. And the colors are drastically different.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right? One is pretty infused with different additives and things because we need a longer storage,
Honey's the same way. They cut honey. Like you go to the grocery store and you see organic. It's number one, there's really no such thing as organic honey, because I can't tell you what my bees touched outside that 2-mile circle, but then everything in the store has to sit on that shelf for so long that they bring it and they cut it with carob syrup and that, and it's always liquid. Well, if you don't know your beekeeper, you really don't know where your honey's coming from. Same thing, if you don't know your local farmer, you don't know where your meat's really coming from.
Right.
It could come over on a boat, and who knows what they're feeding them.
And
Right.
that's kind of one of our issues that we have right now as a country is, origin labeling is a big thing. Just because it's processed here doesn't mean that it was raised here.
Right, which is a whole nother thing. The United States is typically an exporter of all of its agriculture, and we're on the cusp of becoming an importer, which is a huge national security issue in my mind.
Yeah.
And I believe in other producers' minds as well.
Yeah.
Because if we're not controlling our food source or making sure we have a sustainable food source, then that means we're at the whim of other countries dictating us.
Yeah.
Food is one of those, first 3 things of principal needs,
Yes.
right? Shelter, food, and security to some degree. And it really goes to show where relationships with producers is key. Getting to know your local producers, getting out in your community, getting your children integrated into your community and your ag products. I know that Kim's family and Matt's family, they do gardens in their backyards, and they either sell their produce or they consume it, at the household. So it's incredible the story that you guys have of creating that synergy out of conflict and really becoming better because of it, and then being willing to teach others how to do it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to interview you two and talk about how to create things better.
Well, thank you.
Yep, we appreciate everything that you do, trying to help us, get our message out and try and educate people as well. It's hard work and it's very underappreciated, and I don't think any of us are expecting a pat on the back. It's just trying to educate people where their food is coming from and how vital it is, because I wore this hat right here, and usually Mackenzie gets mad when I wear it out in public because it's so nasty.
Sorry,
but this is one of those things where this is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears sitting on this thing. This is hard work, and it's to try and get people the stable of life.
Right.
And I try to educate as many people as I can to get that out, trying to
Hopefully-
help them understand where it's coming from and the changes that need to happen, because we do get killed by the import market. It changes our whole dynamics.
Hopefully through this and through other Talking Ag videos, we can get that education component out there and get kids and adults reintegrated into where their food source comes from.
Yep.
Thank you guys again so
Thanks.
much for
Yep,
joining
thank
us.
you.
Appreciate you.